So it does appear, right, that this text that we have, the Myth of Sisyphus, is a longer text. It's not that long, right? Really take the time that you need. I have highlighted a few sections, and you may wonder about those sections and about the way that I've highlighted them, the reason I've highlighted them. And what I can tell you is that those sections that are highlighted sort of outline the key points. You've got a couple key points at the beginning, and then you have at the very, very end, right, the explanation sort of why Camus titled this the Myth of Sisyphus, right? And this is really, of all the things that we're going to look at, right, reading and understanding sort of what Kierkegaard and Sartre are doing with existentialism and what Camus is saying about the absurd. Those two things are absolutely essential, right? Clearly, right, this class is called Existentialism and Absurdism, in the 20th century in France. So clearly, yes, those are the things that we need to know the most about. What is going to be really important to understand about the absurd is that when we talk about this idea of the divorce, right, of the confrontation, right, between life and between what we're doing, one of the sections in particular, I think it's one of the last highlighted sections I have. It's quite a big chunk that talks about, right, if we know somebody well and we accuse them of doing something awful, and clearly they have not done this. They're good people. They know that we know that they're good people, and yet we're accusing them of something, horrific. They will often say, right, oh, that's absurd, right? That's ridiculous, right? And what is it, right? Is it me that's ridiculous? Is it them that's ridiculous? No, it's the distance between the thing I am saying about them and what is actually true. And whereas that can be resolved between two people, right? We can come to an agreement, right? I can say, oh, I've been mistaken, right? And I had the wrong information. And they can say, hey, here's my life, here's my deeds, here's, what you know about me, what is this? We can resolve it, right? Camus says, though, we cannot resolve that with life itself, right? There is no one to talk to, right? Camus clearly, again, as an atheist, as even probably more so than Sartre, doesn't believe there's anything that responds to us, right? There is, again, for Camus, no God, no universe. Well, there's a universe, but there's nothing responding from that universe, right? That makes that is rational, right? And so, for us, right? Again, the absurd is this idea that probably for Kierkegaard would be resolved in sort of crying out to a God that we believe responds, or at least is aware of who we are, and biblically, right, has responded before. Um, um, but for Camus, it's this idea that we would have no one to cry out to, right? We'd have no one to ask. We have ourselves, and that's it. So, right, that seems like a pretty negative philosophy. It seems like a pretty sort of depressing philosophy that would sort of bring on some despair, which is what it does share, right, with existentialism, right? Sartre talks about this despair of living every day with the responsibilities that we have. And I think when we put these two philosophies together, we really get a pretty good picture of sort of the things that are going through the minds of French society in these periods of both, sort of between the wars and also right after the Second World War, looking at, right, what's happened to us, right? We've had two major wars. We've had the building of fascism and the rise of the Nazi regime in Germany that then threatened to overtake Europe and then did overtake Europe. And then, now we've got this, two full generations of people who have been, ruined by war. What is left, right, for us, right? The absurd is everywhere for us. And the despair, right, in existentialism from, we are responsible for everything, we are responsible for making the right decisions for ourselves, and thus, right, saying that we believe they're the right decisions for everyone. It's a lot of responsibility. There's despair there, right? There's despair in trying to figure out what you can do with your life. And then with Camus, looking and saying that, again, there is no response for why certain bad things are happening, right? This divorce between what we want and what we're getting is, pretty huge. Another good point that Camus makes a little bit earlier in the text, right, that I've also tried to highlight, is that, the absurd is also born from the realization, right, that at some point you have been saying to yourself, right, when I get older, and you've been looking forward to it, right? Oh, when I get older, I can do this, and I'm just wait until tomorrow when I become more experienced, and when I have, you're always looking forward to what's coming, right? Because at some point you're going to be able to do all the things you really are hoping to do now that you can't do. And then suddenly you realize, right, that you are, it's very French, right, heading towards your inevitable end, right? That tomorrow means that someday you will die, and that should be the last thing you want, right? You should be struggling to, put off tomorrow until the latest that you can, because, death arrives, right? Which is, again, right, super depressing, right? So we need to sort of talk through, well, does that not mean that in this class we're basically learning about, depressing things, right? You're responsible for everything, and you're going to be responsible for it for the rest of your life, and that's really depressing. And also, tomorrow's coming, you're going to die, and there's nothing you can do about it, and there's no answers out there in the universe, and, everything is terrible. I don't want that to be the case, right? We're going to talk in the next video about why those are not necessarily always the takeaways we need to have, right? Certainly, I think there is some despair, there is some hesitation about what life is going to be like. There is a great deal, right, in everybody's life of frustration with, this is not what I planned for, this is not what I wanted, right? And certainly for people who are who are part of a faith tradition, right? The hardest question in a faith tradition is, why does, right, a God, right, allow these sorts of things to happen, right? And for those who are not in a faith tradition, why is the universe against me, right? So, right, we do see that, but what can we do about it, and why isn't that always going to be the case? We'll be right back.